This afternoon, dozens of American veterans were arrested on Capitol Hill during a protest of the war. Congressional staffers telling MS Now that the cost of the war has now hit $50 billion. The Pentagon says that there have been 415 U.S. service members wounded. More than a dozen are dead. And from one moment to the next, the administration seesaws from talk of diplomacy to rapid escalation, with U.S. Marines seizing an Iranian cargo ship over the weekend and a fragile ceasefire set to expire this week. All the while, Americans are paying the price of war at the pump. Trump's energy secretary offering a bleak message on when voters might see relief.
When do you think it's realistic for Americans to expect that gas will go back to under $3 a gallon?
I don't know. That could happen later this year. That might not happen until next year.
Next year. So, after the midterm elections. That could be a problem, especially since 65% of voters blame Trump for those higher gas prices. And Trump's overall approval rating is sinking fast. Just 37% of Americans now approve of the job he's doing as president. That is a new low for the second term. And it means that even many people who voted for Trump are now expressing some buyer's remorse. And while many are hurting here at home, the Trump administration is now reportedly considering some sort of bailout for the UAE, which has also seen its economy hit hard by this war.
This story in the Wall Street Journal about the UAE contacting Scott Bessent about potentially the United States providing some kind of currency swap or bailout if the strait remains closed and it continues to injure their economy. What do you make of that, and what do you know about that?
Right. Well, I haven't talked directly with Secretary Bessent about this, but as you know, the UAE has been an incredibly valuable ally throughout this effort, and I'm sure the Treasury Secretary will make every effort to help them out should that be necessary.
Add to all of this that late today we got word of yet another shakeup in the Trump cabinet. The Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez DeRemer, is out. According to the White House, she is the third member of the cabinet to leave in recent weeks, along with, of course, Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem. We now go live to MS Now congressional correspondent Michael Schnell. She's there on Capitol Hill. Michael, it is good to see you. Walk me through what's behind this latest departure.
Yeah, well, Antonia, this news just a few minutes fresh that former Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer has resigned from her post. I will note the White House confirmed she's no longer serving, but notably, they did not say if she was fired or had resigned from her job. As I mentioned, a source familiar with the matter telling me that she had indeed resigned. The big question, what exactly led to this? Because Chavez DeRemer, her tenure at the Labor Department had been shrouded in controversy in a number of investigations. More on that in a moment. But first off, we're told that Chavez DeRemer was actually at the White House in the few minutes that led up to this news of her resignation. Now, we don't yet know who she met with, what they discussed, but she was at the White House. And another interesting tidbit that we're just learning, again, I'm just told from a source familiar with the matter, is that in the coming days, Lori Chavez DeRemer was scheduled to sit down with the Office of Inspector General at the Labor Department as part of their investigation into allegations of a toxic workplace and sexual misconduct by both her and her husband, Dr. Sean DeRemer. So this resignation comes as she was preparing to sit down for that interview for that investigation, which has been going on for weeks and first started with a formal complaint being filed about the secretary's conduct. Now, again, this comes after weeks of controversy and more shoes being dropped in terms of these misconduct allegations against the former secretary. There was most recently discrimination complaints filed by two young female staffers with the Equal Opportunity Commission when they had alleged that there was misconduct, sexual touching by Lori Chavez DeRemer's husband. They also allege a toxic workplace and threats of retaliation for reporting the husband to various authorities. Again, there had also been that Office of Inspector General investigation. There have been all these questions and whispers about if Chavez de Remer would be on the chopping block next in terms of secretaries in the president's cabinet because of all these poor headlines and these misconduct allegations against her. But today we are learning that the secretary jumped ahead and would resign on her own volition. Again, we're going to dig into more details on what actually led to this. But notably, it comes just before she was scheduled to sit down for that high stakes Office of Inspector General interview.
Very interesting timing there. Michael Schnell, thank you, as always, for your incredible reporting. Now, we're going to bring in Michelle Goldberg, columnist for the New York Times, and Mark Leibovich, staff writer for The Atlantic and MS Now political contributor. It's great to have all of you guys here. I guess I'll start with what you hopefully just heard me talking about with Michael Schnell there. Just another piece in this incredibly chaotic story around the president, around the war, around our domestic conditions, the basic functioning of our federal government right now. Mark, what do you make of this?
Well, I mean, this is just sort of another chapter in the chaotic narrative. I mean, I think to some degree, the cabinet chaos is something that probably, was certainly foreshadowed in the first term. To some degree, this latest one is overshadowed a bit by the Bondi and the Nome resignations, firing, whatever you want to call them, just because they were in such high-profile positions that the president seemed to care deeply about much more than he probably does the Labor Department. I do think, though, that the larger issue here is not so much the larger chaos, but I think just the war, the tariffs, the economy. There's a sense that the administration is really spinning in a direction that is just out of control, and it's obviously not popular. So this is probably of a piece to that, but I think it's probably derivative at some point. And I think the main thing is obviously the ongoing war.
Michelle, how do you read the extent to which the war is responsible for the polling numbers, the poor feedback this president is receiving right now? Because while his numbers are historically weak, it seems that his grip on the party is still incredibly firm. You see some signs at times of pushback, but at the end of the day, they are still incredibly loyal to this president, even though he is technically a lame duck president and technically not even on the ballot right now in the midterms.
Right. Well, so his numbers were already pretty low before the war. The war has sent them even lower, and I think really created a situation that highlights to people the limits of his ability to create his own reality, and also highlights just the kind of blatant contradiction between his campaign rhetoric and the way he's governing. I don't think it's much of a surprise if you follow Trump that he often has very hawkish instincts, but he certainly told people very specifically that he did not plan to start new wars in the Middle East, and in fact said that if Kamala Harris was elected, that's what she would do. And so you're right that the voters are loyal to him. But there are some cracks, when he's losing the kind of influencer class that, again, there's not that many of them, but they were very important, I think, in creating this sense of momentum and inevitability around this campaign. There was a sense at the beginning of Donald Trump's presidency that he had captured, not just the White House, but like the cultural zeitgeist. And that is absolutely gone, right? He's kind of flailing with nothing but the hardcore dead enders still behind it.
Well, to your point, figures like Alex Jones, even, he's an interesting figure because on the one hand, when you look at someone like Alex Jones, you kind of don't even want to listen to anything they have to say, any of their cultural analysis, because he's a huckster who kind of will go where the wind blows. But that's sort of the point of what makes him interesting, because then that tells you, well, maybe that is where the wind is in fact blowing. I want you to take a listen, Mark, to some of his recent comments about the president.
And we're supposed to just sit here and love this crap. It's just poll numbers go straight down, and all the polls show the Republicans are going to lose the midterms in 7 months by a landslide. A disaster. A total and complete disaster.
So is Alex Jones, in your view, someone we should just write off, or do you think he tells us something about where culture is heading?
Well, I guarantee you the White House is not writing this off. And look, whether we like Alex Jones or not, this is a big center of influence within the world that voted for Donald Trump. And I think it's worth pointing out a couple things. I mean, Donald Trump's popularity or lack of popularity, the loyalty of his base and so forth. I mean, what does it even mean these days? I mean, it's not like he's going to be on the ballot again. And I mean, he's already had trouble in the past, getting people to vote for Republicans when he's not on the ballot. I think enthusiasm writ large for Republicans, which is, what's going to be influential in the midterms, is really, really low. And I do think that the way the president has led and the way the Republican Party has continued to follow pretty blindly is going to be a real damper on the party in the midterms. But yeah, I mean, look, Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and the whole group, I mean, they're not going anywhere. I mean, Donald Trump is term limited. So I do think maybe they're looking at maybe taking a longer view and maybe feel a little bit freer to tell a truth that they might have hesitated to do before.
Michelle, Trump has beaten the odds, come back from the dead before. Is there a risk here of us underestimating the president's ability to snap back, especially if with these peace talks that are supposed to continue, things shift in the war soon? Could he make a comeback?
Depends what you mean by a comeback, right? Because he's not up for election again. I don't think anybody is expecting him to be removed from office. I think that there was maybe a fantasy some of us had in the first term that some of his, kind of corruption and misbehavior and mismanagement was so egregious that at some point there would be political consequences for him or legal consequences. I don't think anybody thinks that that is true anymore, but I don't see a possibility for him to kind of regain the American people because he's not going to change. I suppose there could be a miraculous outcome where the Iranians decide to basically drop all of their demands and Donald Trump can declare victory in this war. I mean, obviously, anything in this universe is possible. Right now, we're not even sure if the Iranians are going to agree to talk to the administration, although it looks like they're open to some sort of negotiations. But, right now, I think it's pretty clear that the United States, or Donald Trump at least, is desperate to wrap this up and has no idea how to do that.